Voting rights is dead in Congress. Bitcoin erases all of its 2021 gains, and Britney Spears finally has her day in court. Wednesday Need to Know. Let's go. Good morning. This is Cheddar's Need to Know podcast for June 23rd, and I am Carlo Versano here once again with Baker McAdoo Machado. Baker, good to see you.
Happy Wednesday, Carlo. So, Carlo, a few weeks now being a daddy. How would you assess what daddy life is like right now?
It's great. It's really hard, I gotta say. Everybody who tells you that it's hard, they're not kidding. It is exhausting. Becky's doing the lion's share of the work right now, and she's doing an incredible job. But it's hard, man. It's really hard, but it's great.
What's your sleep schedule like? Like, how many hours per day are you saying you're averaging on the sleep cycle right now?
Probably getting 4 or 5.
Oh my God, Carlo, we got to bump that up. You're basically giving me birth control as you talk about this.
Yeah, it's not great, but everybody says it'll get better after the first couple months. And the baby's doing great. She's healthy, which is all that matters.
Yes.
And she's getting cuter by the day. So I'll see if I can start posting some pictures of her on social media because we haven't had her out there yet.
Yes.
Also, Baker, just before we start on the news, thank you to everybody who sent in their hiccup remedies yesterday.
Oh, yeah.
I haven't gotten my email situation is out of control. You know when your inbox gets to the place where like you just can't even bring yourself to start.
My anxiety is already through the roof just hearing this already.
Yeah, so I'm gonna spend some time getting through the emails today. We will talk about the hiccup cures tomorrow. So
Good.
You have one more day to send in your home remedies.
I can't wait to hear those answers. So, Carlo, let's dive into the big news today, and let's start in Washington. That's where a sweeping voting rights bill that it would have impacted virtually all aspects of how elections are run was blocked by Republicans in the Senate, who used the filibuster to kill it in its tracks. Now, the GOP put up a united front opposing the bill, which is known as the For the People Act. They're saying it ultimately meant to benefit just the Democrats, and it infringed on states being able to conduct their own elections without interference. This, of course, after Senator Joe Manchin signed off on the bill at the last minute, giving it its crucial 50th vote, but still 10 shy of breaking that filibuster, Carlo.
Yeah, Democrats say that this bill was necessary to count the various state laws that are being enacted across this country by Republican legislatures meant to make it harder to vote. Hundreds of those bills have been introduced across the country since the election. 24 have already been passed. But regardless, this is the biggest defeat, I would say, for President Biden's legislative agenda so far. The left is furious at the White House for just not doing enough on this bill, even as people like Chuck Schumer called the dismantling of voting rights a, quote, existential threat from Republicans. And it is true that the White House and, Democrats in the Senate sort of sat on their hands, I guess. But there wasn't, I don't know, this thing was never going to pass. So I'm a little bit, I don't really understand why there's so much like, well, the Democrats didn't do enough. There was no chance that this bill was going to pass. They needed 10 votes from a party that is, still in thrall to Donald Trump, a significant number of whose representatives don't even believe that Joe Biden is a legitimate president. Do we think we're going to get a voting rights bill from that? Please.
I mean, well, on top of that, you needed Kyrsten Sinema and Joe Manchin to nuke the filibuster here. And literally for months, if not years, Carlo, both of those senators have said that they were not going to do that. Kyrsten Sinema just even writing an op-ed in the Washington Post saying she had no interest in getting rid of the filibuster. There were so many voting rights groups that were basically trying to lobby both of them to change their minds on this. So where do you basically go from here if you're the Democratic Party? Well, Chuck Schumer essentially insinuated yesterday he has a few other tricks up his sleeve, but he didn't say what he plans to do. But it seems like Democrats are going to use this as a campaign issue to try to get more seats in the Senate in the 2022 midterms, potentially with Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Ohio as potential targets for Democrats there. And maybe then you get more Democratic senators that then you could nuke the filibuster to change these rules. But as of right now, Carlo, as you said, this was dead on arrival the moment that it got to the Senate.
Yeah, I mean, if Democrats want to pass landmark bills like this, they need to win more Senate seats. I mean,
Yes.
that's the way to do it.
Yeah, can't do it with just the 50 that they got right now. Carlo, obviously, because the entire world revolves around us here in New York City, we do want to do a quick update on the New York City mayoral race. Andrew Yang, in kind of a surprise, but not really a surprise, conceded this after he came in a distant fourth place on primary night. A remarkably poor finish for the candidate who was leading in the polls for almost its entirety until late. Eric Adams has a formidable lead right now, though the race is really far from over here, Carlo. If Adams doesn't hit 50%, which, by the way, he's not there yet, when the absentee ballots are all counted here, the city's ranked choice voting system will come into play, and it could be weeks before a winner is essentially declared. But if you're Eric Adams and his campaign team right now, you have to feel very optimistic, given the fact that he is up double digits right now on Catherine Garcia, who's most likely going to win a majority of the absentee ballots that are going to be counted here. And he still has about a 7 or 8 point lead on Maya Wiley. So if you are Eric Adams, it seems like you have this basically in control right now to get this done.
It sure seems like it's going to be Adams. Again, the Brooklyn Borough president, former NYPD captain, sort of a colorful character, I guess you could say. He's kind of a weirdo, frankly. And I say that there's nothing wrong with being a weirdo. In fact, some of New York City's best mayors were total weirdos, right?
Yes, we're the chief of weirdos. Are you kidding me?
Yes, exactly. But what a downfall for Andrew Yang.
Oh, beyond, yes.
This is a guy who never really explained, at least to me, why he was running for mayor. He ran for president, it didn't happen, and then he decided he wanted to run for mayor. He never even voted for mayor since living in New York City. That was always disqualifying to me. Not to mention he was one of the many people who fled the city immediately during the pandemic last year. Again, people have got to do what they got to do for their families, but that to me was also disqualifying if you want to be mayor of this town. So yeah, it looks like Maya Wiley and Kathy Garcia are both of them would be, either of them would be the first woman to be New York City mayor. They are both trailing Eric Adams. Garcia, who is the former sanitation commissioner, she is who I ranked first yesterday, just based on her sort of track record as somebody who actually.
A lot of people ranked Garcia first. If you look at the exit polls already, Carlo, Garcia won Manhattan overwhelmingly, but literally the other boroughs, we're talking Brooklyn, Bronx, Queens, Eric Adams really pulled away by substantial margins in all of those other areas. And when you're going back really quickly to Andrew Yang, by the way, was #1 in the polls for pretty much the entirety of the race. He had more money basically than anybody else. But as the debates went on and he showed less and less of an understanding of how the government in New York City worked, being an outsider from the business perspective, it didn't sit well, it seemed like, with a lot of voters, just based on his inexperience of how a lot of the government worked, which is why he famously came out saying that he would have chosen Catherine Garcia as his #2 to help him run the city office. That didn't go over well with her at the beginning, but then they both basically campaigned together to basically say, rank us #1 and #2. But either way, a huge fall for grace for Andrew Yang. Who knows what he goes to do from here? There's been rumors, Ben Smith at the New York Times reported yesterday, potentially he might run for Congress, maybe against Catherine Maloney here in New York City. But we'll continue to watch, obviously, what happens with all of that. Okay, let's move on to something we talked about yesterday, Carlo. COVID hospitalizations starting to rebound in a handful of states with poor vaccination levels, and the trend especially notable among 18 to 29-year-olds. The hospitalization rate in Missouri, Utah, and Arkansas is up 30% just in the last 2 weeks, with younger patients driving that increase. All the states seeing rising hospitalizations trail the national vaccination rate, though, so far.
Yeah, because testing has really fallen off a cliff nationwide. I think it's down something like 60% in the last couple of weeks. The real thing you got to look for is hospitalizations now. That was really always the case, but it's really important. I think that the case number metric that we've all been using for the last year and change now is basically irrelevant because a lot of people just aren't getting tested because a lot of people are vaccinated.
Yep,
so the number of patients in the hospital with confirmed case of COVID, much more reliable indicator of where this virus is being transmitted. And as expected, it is being transmitted in some of these states where the vaccine levels just aren't enough to keep this thing at bay.
All right, Carlo, I know you've been on the lumber beat for some time now, so let's talk a little inflation and the lumber numbers. Lumber prices have been falling fast since they hit all-time highs just a few weeks ago. That as demand for DIY home renovation projects during the pandemic outstripped supply. Prices still, though, much higher than they were pre-COVID, but those lumber futures now trading below $1,000, Carlo, for the first time in months.
This is all Econ 101, Baker, which
Yep.
we remember old supply and demand, right?
Oh,
You've got
yes.
the sawmills, they were closed during the pandemic, or they were running on, on lower levels. They're now running on overdrive. They are cranking out all that plywood and all those 2x4s that everybody needs for their deck renovations or their house siding. So they're helping to meet the demand. That demand, meanwhile, has fallen because people just got spooked by the high prices. Like I talked about my parents, they wanted to reside their house. It was way too expensive, so they stopped. A lot of people doing that. So it'll take some time for this for the futures numbers to be reflected at the in the lumber aisle at Home Depot. This slowdown in demand should lead to even lower prices, but the price drop isn't going to immediately impact consumers. Just right, a drop in price from the sawmill doesn't take into account the supply that lumber yards have in stock. It's like when oil prices go down, it doesn't instantly translate to lower gas prices, right? So I would suggest if you have a big lumber project that you're trying to get done, I would suggest you wait it out a little bit more to see what happens.
Yeah, that's me at my house. We're trying to do a fence, and we've been waiting for those lumber prices to go down. By the way, lumber, not the only thing that has been basically going through the roof of late. Chicken prices as well. You can maybe attribute that to the chicken sandwich wars that are happening all over the world right now. But when you have chicken prices going up, lumber prices going up, gas prices going up, this leads a lot of people to be very concerned about inflation, which, by the way, Janet Yellen and the Fed continue to tell us is only going to be an intermittent thing. It's going to be pops here, and then it's going to go back down, but obviously something to still watch. But the other thing, Carlo, that has been having a wild ride is the price of Bitcoin. It fell below $30,000 for the first time yesterday since January. It briefly turned negative on the year before it rebounded. Now, cryptos have been taking a bath of late as well. Ethereum down 15% just this week. Dogecoin down 75% since it peaked around the time that Elon Musk had hyped it on SNL. And Coinbase, the crypto trading platform, it is down close to 40% since it went public 2 months ago, just as Bitcoin, Carlo, was hitting all-time highs.
One of the worst timings of an IPO that I can possibly remember.
True.
Right?
Yes, true.
This company is basically a proxy for the price of Bitcoin, and it went public just as Bitcoin peaked. I have gone from being sort of agnostic to semi-bearish on crypto. To really, I am now just a full-fledged bear pessimist.
Wow, you're going through all the stages of emotion right now through this.
Well, I mean, you know what it was? It was that pipeline hack from a few weeks ago that really sealed the deal for me on this stuff. When it just became apparent that this crypto thing is causing more problems than it's solving. And honestly, it feels like crypto is solving a problem that doesn't actually exist. Like, seriously, what is the problem with fiat money? When I say fiat money, I mean money from the government, right? US dollars. What is the problem with fiat money that crypto purports to solve? That's a serious question, and I'm happy to hear from some of the Bitcoin evangelists out there who may be listening. They would answer that by saying that, if crypto replaced fiat money, we wouldn't be reliant on state-run banks for our monetary policy. I would reply to that by saying, why is that? Why? What's wrong with being reliant on state-run central banks? I mean, the last time I checked, the United States dollar was pretty stable. It's certainly far less volatile than a digital currency that loses or gains 10 or 20% of its value every time Elon Musk tweets about it, right? I mean, if you think of crypto as a commodity play, as an actual inflation hedge, maybe it's a little more interesting as an argument. Or even if you're just playing it as a speculative thing, right? If you're like, I think that I can beat this market making some money, look, more power to you, go for it. But this idea that it's going to replace our money is just,
I would counter that just by saying, listen, all the things you're saying are things I've heard from a lot of people who were bearish on cryptocurrencies as well. The only thing I would counter is will we see governments then create their own cryptocurrencies as a result of this? Did what happened with the pipeline hack, make the United States government think that maybe they, because of cybersecurity purposes or all these other reasons, want to get into the crypto game as well? I think most people believe crypto is here to stay. Bitcoin, who knows, just because of the price of it, the volatility of it, the security aspects of it, Ethereum, Dogecoin, the like. You mentioned Elon Musk. Do you want it essentially tied to one person that basically can make the entire price rise and fall based on a tweet? So I'm curious then if that means countries like India, for instance. India is looking into creating their own government-backed cryptocurrency. Will we see more governments get into this? That could be another thing here.
Well, I hope that they don't, because I mean, the other thing that we have to talk about here is just, and we've mentioned this in podcasts past, but the insane amounts of energy that it takes to mine this stuff. I mean,
crazy.
What are we doing here? We're finally making some progress on climate change and renewable energy, and we're going to throw that all away to mine this fake currency on a blockchain. And the other issue, of course, what I was saying before about the pipeline hack. This stuff is basically just become a money laundering tool for criminals, as we saw with Colonial Pipeline. So, look, there's people that are smarter than me that would say that Bitcoin is the future, crypto is the future, and I'm an idiot and a living in the old days. It's basically a speculative boom. I think it's going to hurt a lot of people. If I'm wrong, though, I will eat crow. I'm happy to eat crow on this podcast if I am wrong.
Where do you even buy crow, by the way, if you ever decided to eat it? Because I know, listen, that phrase is as old as dirt, but I don't even know where you go to find one, unless you just find one in the streets. Carlo, I do want to talk about the story that is near and dear to my heart, and I'm going to be obsessing over all day today. Britney Spears. She is expected to speak today at her court hearing regarding her conservatorship. She has requested the hearing on an expedited basis, though it's not clear what she's going to say today. Now, her relationship with her father, Jamie, who controls her $60 million fortune, likely a topic. This after new reporting yesterday in the New York Times suggests that Britney quietly tried to end her conservatorship much earlier than previously known, Carlo. This is going to be, what's the phrase, must-see television today, if I can see any clips of what happens today.
Yeah, are there going to be cameras? It's unclear to me if we're going to be able to actually see what happens.
I don't think there is going to be cameras, but I believe that this, so I got an invitation from, yes, but there will be audio of this because nobody knows based off of COVID restrictions if, there's going to be audio, people are jumping in on Zoom, all of that stuff. So either way, whatever happens, there's going to be clips of Britney Spears talking today, and I'm just going to be all over it.
So according to that story in the New York Times, which is really worth reading, they've been on top of this. They did that. They produced that documentary for Hulu FX a few months ago that had a lot of people sort of talking about this issue. So the key graph from that Times story, as early as 2014, in a hearing closed to the public, Spears' court-appointed lawyer, Sam Ingham, said that she wanted to explore removing her father as conservator, citing his drinking, among other objections, on a, quote, shopping list of grievances. So if you read that Times story, they cite court records showing that Britney Spears says that she felt forced to stay at a mental health facility and to perform against her will by that conservatorship. Think about that. If you went to one of those big Britney shows in Vegas when she was doing that residency, you may have unknowingly been watching somebody who felt like she was forced to be up there, which is a terrible thing to think about. But the big thing today, I think, and you tell me if I'm wrong, because I know this is more your beat as a former entertainment reporter, will she formally petition the court to end the conservatorship? Because that's something that she actually hasn't done.
Nope,
for all of this mishigash, she hasn't actually formally done that. So I think if she does that today, that's a big deal.
Absolutely. And look, she's been in this conservatorship for a very, very long time. I mean, so long, Carlo. I used to cover her old hearings way back in the day when I lived in Los Angeles. If she does, it still doesn't even confirm that the judge will even grant her to basically get out of this conservatorship. Although we should note her brother in interviews has also said that she wants to end her conservatorship. She seems like, based off of fans right now, based off all the stuff we get off of her Instagram, she'd be able to basically control her life, and she should be able to control her life. But so we're going to be fascinated to see what she actually says in all of this. Or will she still have just getting rid of Jamie out of the conservatorship and still having another person that's basically also helping her conservatorship stay a part of it, just getting her dad out of it. And she has threatened, Carlo, by the way, she is not going to perform. She's not going to do any more shows until her dad is out of the picture from her conservatorship. So no doubt anything she says is going to be interesting, but I don't know if the judge is going to end the conservatorship today based off what she says.
I feel like dirty talking about Britney Spears almost, just because just what this society and the media has done to this poor woman.
And that documentary highlighted that, Carlo, and it made us all realize how terrible we were to her back then.
Yeah, it's so gross. Just let her live.
I know.
Right?
Exactly. Let her
honestly,
live.
that guy back in 2007, one of the original viral videos, who was like, "Leave Britney alone." He was
Yes,
right.
Chris Crocker. Yes, leave Britney alone. Yes, the best one of all of them. Finally, Carlo, if you don't know the name Rachel Zegler yet, you will. The 20-year-old singer, actress, and YouTuber from Jersey, right next door, got her big break as Maria in Steven Spielberg's West Side Story reboot that was supposed to come out last year. It's now scheduled for Christmas, but she's already got her next gig lined up already, Carlo, and it is a big one. She has reportedly been cast as Snow White in the live-action remake of the Disney classic.
What a gig. Snow White, the original Disney animated film, by the way, premiered in 1938. Really the thing that put Disney animation on the map,
true.
which almost 100 years ago now. It'll be interesting to see how Disney deals with the elements of that story that don't exactly translate to 2021, like being molested by a prince while you're comatose in the forest.
Oh, God.
But
True, though.
you got to hand it to this girl, and I say girl because she's 20 years old and she's already about to become this breakout. Maria in West Side Story, what a gig. Followed up by Snow White, not too shabby for someone who'd never even really had a big part before any of this. She's making YouTube videos like a year ago, but she is apparently quite the singer, so get prepared to hear that name.
And by the way, these live-action remakes that Disney does, I love them. I think they do such a really good job updating them. And you're right, there are some things that Disney has had to do with not just Snow White, but with a bunch of their other franchises where they've had to update them to really either realize in the past that they were incredibly racist. I'm talking about You Splash Mountain, or things that can be perceived as, what you just mentioned with Snow White as well. So yes, Disney has to update a lot of this stuff, but their live action stuff, I still think, is some of the best stuff they've ever created.
Yeah. I wonder how they'll deal with the Seven Dwarfs. Will they hire?
That is a good question.
They should hire, right, actual little people.
They're going to have Andy Serkis, who did Gollum and Lord of the Rings, just basically do all of them, I'm sure.
Right, or maybe, yeah, who knows? But it's Disney. They know what they're doing. Okay, folks, well, on that lovely note, that is what you need to know for Wednesday, June 23rd. Hiccup Cure is coming tomorrow.
Can't wait.